This is the Darshan Talks podcast, regulatory guy, irregular podcast with host Darshan Kulkarni. You can find the show on Twitter at Darshan Talks or the show's website at darshantalks.com.
Unlike most of the conversations I land up having with companies about legal regulatory issues, I just thought this was an interesting conversation that came up with a couple of friends of mine, and I thought it would be important and interesting to discuss it, and I'd love to get your feedback on it. For those of you who haven't heard, there's a community out there called F.I.R.E, which is Financially Independent, Retire Early. And the idea of F.I.R.E is to have enough money to be able to retire early. And that means anything from 2 years early to 20 years early. So you have people who are retiring in their 30s, their 20s, in their 40s. And that seems very unusual for a lot of people. Some people say that the goal is to save and invest very aggressively, somewhere between 50 and 75% of your income, so that you can retire sometime in your 30s or 40s. A key mistake that a lot of companies make, or a lot of individuals make, and it's not so much companies, it's individuals, and this would be really interesting for pharma execs, or even non-pharma execs, actually. A lot of people who are just in the pharma industry. People tend to think that I don't want to retire at the age of 40. I'm in my prime. I don't want to retire at the age of 30. I've barely started. But financial independence doesn't mean sitting somewhere on a tropical beach and playing golf all the time. It means that you choose whether to have a full-time job, and you can choose not to. You can scale back to a part-time job or stop working altogether. The most common complaint associated with it is the idea of, do I have to save 50, 75% of my income? And do I have that kind of disposable income to be able to save for it? The other component of this is, how early do I need to start? So some people are saying that I haven't even thought about it. I don't think about retirement till later on. Well, sometimes it's helpful to use the power of compounding to your advantage. So some of the key components of financial independence is having a clear understanding of what your net worth is. So net worth is your assets minus your liability. For those of you who've never heard of this, there was something called the Trinity study. And that basically said that if you take 4% of your net worth and you withdraw it, you should have enough money theoretically to last you for 30 years. Another way to phrase the same thing is if you take your annual income, do you have 25 times that to be able to meet? So whatever you need on an annual basis, do you have 25 times that? And if you do, you probably have enough based on the Trinity study to last you 30 years. Again, there are people who argue that the Trinity study is not completely useful, and it's a little aggressive. It may make sense to actually consider more like a 3% withdrawal rate. Some people say it's too conservative, and they go with a 5% withdrawal rate. Some people I've seen talk about a 2.5% withdrawal rate. So it all comes down to what your comfort level is. The question I have is, how many individuals in pharma are considering F.I.R.E? How many individuals in pharma think that this is realistic? And how many people are actually taking steps towards it? Love to hear your thoughts. Feel free to message me on Twitter at Darshan Talks. Love to have a conversation about this.
This is the Darshan Talks podcast, regulatory guy, irregular podcast with host Darshan Kulkarni. You can find the show on Twitter at Darshan Talks or the show's website at darshantalks.com.